so that Trace can't do that again.
You'd hope so. There's not many champions who can recreate the Quadra longsword zombie push Graves strategy.
It really was just a perfect storm, wasn't it? Because they had to pick the top catch with a crappy wave clear, which led to a really fast first turret, and then very quick rotations to take down the rest of the outers. And then they had no hard engage later in the game. It really was sort of a perfect storm. It's actually amazing that SKT lasted as long as they did.
Testament to SKT. Bang tried to put his carry pants on, got very close to it, but in the end, the Baron just sealed the deal. So it's the last opportunity for that Graves ban you spoke about.
And it will be Rise, so GP still up. Will be the final ban here. SK Telecom has shown a penchant for first picking MF on the blue side.
You really want them to just do this again,
I really, really do.
That was the death knell of teams like Samsung that had great game ones and then lost trying to recreate those ideas in game two.
Yeah, but usually with Samsung, we saw bans coming in so that you couldn't quite do it exactly the same way, but that's not happening here. Will be, oh, they banned Trundle themselves.
World champions don't need any of that folly, Monte Cristo.
That's sad. Well, they are going to first pick GP this time, which means that Jin can take MF if they want, but with their self-made Trundle ban, I don't think they're going to. Instead, they take the next best support and the next best jungler. So Elise and Alistair, which means Bengi is going to have to be on something that might be kind of weird.
Yeah, Rek'Sai gone, Elise taken. Certainly not going to expect Kindred or any of that sort of champion from Bengi. Where does this champion pool go there? I mean, even just thinking historically, where do you see him going?
Yeah, I mean, Lee Sin maybe would be another option for him. But it's going to be interesting to see what he defaults to after this pick ban. So Tom Kench once again with Gangplank and MF. So you have Make It Rain, you have the GP ultimate, and you have bullet time. So basically bullets and cannonballs flying from all possible directions at once. That is a massive combo.
Double pirates. And the Graves available again. We need to mention to our viewers, Trace has been playing the heck out of this in solo queue.
Yes. Yes, he has, and he knows his matchup is going to be Tom Kench, unless they decide to flex it to Wolf.
Now the difference
I'm
will
not sure
be
what Bengi's doing on his camera right now.
The jungle pathing will be very different. Blank objectively did almost nothing in that previous game when it comes to pathing, so expect, if we do see Quadra Longsword Graves, I expect plenty of pathing from Bengi to punish it, but on what?
Yes, that's the big puzzler right now. Poppy, let's hope it's Poppy.
Poppy will be something. We're still overdue for Poppy. It'd be crazy to me to go a full week of champions, every team play, and not see Poppy.
Pilot 2 on this Ezreal, that's something that we've seen a lot from him in the past, but not a lot of in this particular meta. Now,
This
Faker,
is getting interesting.
What? No, it's not going to be that. He could just go back to Evelynn, which is a staple, but would be the first Eve of the season. And it'll be Quinn and Evelynn. So it will be, in fact, a Tom Kench support, and a Quinn now up against Graves in the top lane from Duke. Faker will be playing Gangplank in the mid lane.
Now there is, of course, the potential that we see the mid lane Quinn. Both those champions can flex between top and mid.
That's true.
I wouldn't bet against a mid lane Quinn, but Jinna is the one now that has a bit of a head scratcher against them.
Take Corky.
That's what you want to see?
I want to see it again, Papa Smithy.
There is certainly the potential that of Ezreal going mid, Graves going AD carry, probably not going to happen, but could happen. One more AD carry, for old time's sake.
Well, they have Peel this game.
Oh my goodness gracious. If they did this, I would lose it.
Oh, no! Okay, fine.
The suffering begins for Monte Cristo.
Cassiopeia, so high damage composition here. They're going to be looking to kite very heavily. They're going to do a blue build Ezreal with Iceborne and then try and kite with Elise so that Cassiopeia and Graves and Ezreal can do damage. Should be interesting. And SKT has a huge wombo combo of Evelynn ult into Gangplank and MF ult. And then they have a split pusher in Duke.
So, second Gangplank of the season after Someday, I believe?
Yes, I believe that is true.
So Gangplank's been one of those 100% contested picks, as you'd expect. SKT definitely not going to have the same problems they had last time. The big question mark, Quinn versus Graves. That is your top lane matchup right here.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So we'll see how much work the blind can do against this top lane Graves. Quinn, of course, shown off very well by Smeb yesterday in the Quinn Fiora matchup, and just about how fast he can get on the map. And combined with the Tom Kench, the mobility is absolutely nuts from SK Telecom, so they will be able to collapse very quickly if anyone on Janair is out of position.
Not really the prototypical person to bring along with the Tom Kench. I guess maybe Evelyn is the closest thing there, but certainly not the Quinn.
Now you turn her into an eagle, and then you come out and just AoE people in the back line, right?
It's possible.
All right, well, let's get into it, guys. SK Telecom versus Janair, Game 2, coming up right now. Well, Papa, there are a lot of people watching this stream, but I'm pretty sure we were the only ones who enjoyed that last game. I loved it.
It was, again, reminiscent of a certain Heimerdinger jungle game that I got to watch when people break League of Legends in new and amusing ways. Janair, they made it work with the triple AD carry combat. For a second there, it looked like it would be all for naught. 42 minutes of poking at turrets just to be smashed down by Bang's Lucian, but it didn't come to be. And now, you know it gets serious when they sub in 2 double world champions.
That's right, bringing Faker and Bengi back. Bengi playing the first Evelyn of the season in Korea, and definitely a champion that he has a lot of history on, but not something we've seen very many people prioritize. But interesting draft from Janair, forces his hand a little bit, banning the Rek'Sai and leaving the GP up and prioritizing Alistar and Elise.
This might be a silly question, but I don't seem to remember Faker playing too much Gangplank.
He is not. In fact, this might be his first competitive game on Gangplank. I will go ahead and take a look at that one.
The mid laner that, of course, you would associate Gangplank with in this scene is GBM, of course, now left to NRG in America, but his Gangplank mechanics will be on full display on this same channel later on in the NALCS. This might actually be Faker's first game. My first inkling is yes, but thankfully we have technology to confirm that.
Yeah, and we saw it on other teams, but SKT mostly just banned it out, especially over the course of the World Championship, and it wasn't something that Marin really ever played either. It was mostly Someday and GBM that were the big GP players.
Has there been an SKT player playing Gangplank since the Gangplank pentakill in the OGN show match a couple of years ago?
I mean, there have been Gangplank games, so.
From SKT?
From SKT, no, probably not, but that wasn't an SKT game either. It was just an SKT player.
SKT player, Impact, another NALCS player. They played Gangplank in League, Monte Cristo.
Yeah, this is going to be Faker's first game on GP, just like earlier this week was his first ever game on Corki in the mid lane, and he did very well on that pick. I assume we're going to see much the same thing from his Gangplank.
Riot slowing down on champion release. They need to step it up, otherwise maybe Faker will play everything. It's getting closer and closer.
It's true. Nice trade there of Kuzan.
I have to say, just thinking about this matchup, it sounds super, super punishing for Cassiopeia once a few items come in and those barrels go from hurting to decimating a Cassiopeia who's short-ranged. It's not quite a melee matchup for Gangplank, but it feels like Cassio's going to always be pretty predictable, fishing for Qs to go all in. Obviously, there is a lot of all-in trading potential for Kuzan, but I feel like Gangplank's outscaling is going to be pretty apparent in this matchup.
Yeah, and also the fact that should she ult, I mean, Faker doesn't even have to dodge it, can just immediately clear the CC with the oranges and continue on his merry way.
BK?
That's right, he will BK. So Bengi actually getting collapsed on here in his own jungle. Will be found by Winged, and Trey's gonna flash over, and that's the huge damage of Graves these days if you hit both sides of that Q. Nice job from Winged and Trace on the invade early.
So we've seen Bengi play 3 games so far and die twice at his blue buff at 4 minutes. They're not done.
And Faker the next target here. They're going to try and dive this. Exhaust now down onto Wing. Faker trying to get out, and he's not going to live. Kuzan gets the
Wow.
ignite, and barely lives through that. Faker used his exhaust, but not his flash. Meanwhile, Jadair trading favorably in the bottom lane as they find themselves up 1,000 gold at 4 minutes.
Welcome back to Champions, the double world champions. You're both dead.
What a fantastic start to this game number 2.
This series just keeps on giving.
Yeah, it is the series that keeps on giving.
Except to maybe fans that want to see kills.
Well, now they got the Papa Smithy.
2 and 4 minutes, come on, that's not LPL timings.
Hey, at least we have as many kills in this game at 4 minutes as we had at like the first 30 in the last game, so you calm down there.
All right.
All right, so Trace going to be trading with Duke once again. Winged is here, and Cocoon going to stop Duke for the time being, and Duke is the next to fall. Winged finishing up the kill, and Trace kiting, and Winged now on a big roll through the jungle.
Winged is stepping up so far from his abject poor display a couple of days ago against Chaser. He was against his former teammate, got completely out-jungled by Chaser, and suddenly, 3 ganks, 3 kills.
3 ganks very quickly. And that means Trace has some options here. He's going to go back and buy some swords. Not as many swords as last time.
Oh, he's changed them into an improved sword already. How disappointing.
The long sword goes into his serrated dirk, though, so it's more like a shorter sword that has notches in it.
But he could have had 4 swords and then a serrated dirk and whatever the CDR item's called.
How does that work anyway? Why would you turn a long sword into a dirk?
The questions that will plague our generation, Monte Cristo.
Don't try and think about League of Legends itemization too much.
Or the lore.
Or really anything beyond the actual strategy in the game, and you're in a...
And then depending on the series, maybe don't think about that either.
Yeah. It's all right. This one's worth thinking about, though. That was a very thoughtful first game played by Janair.
And the pressure put on by Winged. How many times have we said in the last year that Bengi's been comprehensively outpathed, but Winged has been on a tear?
Yeah, he has. And Bengi forced to play quite defensively. Meanwhile, Winged already starting to get tanky. Moving into the Cinder Hulk. That's the Bomby Cinder. And he's going to come up and help out Trace here. He's getting very low indeed. Duke dodging out of the queue. But Faker has to play very far back, and he has fallen very far behind indeed when it comes to farm.
Winged's not done. Pressuring Bengi's jungle. He's not letting up the pressure at all. Neither's Kuzo.
Yeah. Pushing forward, and Faker went back and bought boots and a sapphire crystal, so that
is nothing.
That is not going to help him at all in this situation.
More oranges for sustain, I guess. Definitely sad times. If you're SKT, and you have to say that honestly, Gangplank's not really a Faker type champion. He loves lane dominance. You know, if he's going to be playing farm, as Duke has to flash. If he's going to play a farm champion, he's usually playing that Orianna that, of course, he's very well known for. The Gangplank, a lot of lane pressure. Bengi's looking for something. He's fishing in the mid lane.
Trying to turn this around. He knows Winged is into the top side, saw the cocoon and the forced flash. But you have to ask, maybe it was worth banning this Grave. He's going to show himself, but there's nothing to look for there. Has hit level 6, but not going to be tossing out his ultimate. Now Faker 6-2, so they have some very strong ganking possibilities with the Gangplank and the Evelynn ult combined.
I can definitely see multiple scenarios where Duke out-duels the Graves, though, if you use that range, if you use the vision denial when you hit your Q. It used to be that Quinn was only viable against purely melee laners, but when you effectively reduced range champions to melee with your Q, and then, of course, with Gangplank, as you mentioned, with the pressure that Evelynn can put down, it's going to be hard for Trace to overextend for turret damage like he was able to do in the previous game.
Yeah, that'll be one of the bigger challenges for sure. Duke using his ult to return himself to lane now. And Bang, of course, opening up a very solid CS advantage in the bottom side of about 20, thanks to the fact that it is a blue build Ezreal versus a 524 MF.
It's worth knowing that what Ezreal, specifically blue build Ezreal, puts together is Trace. Seeing if he's going to be tempted. So far, not.
I know, he's such a measured player. Bengi still lurking around. Trace knows he can't come through Tri-Brush, but he's still getting some, worryingly close to that lane brush, but you could see he is such a conservative and smart player when it comes to the map. He is one of the least vulnerable players I have seen to ganks.
It's crazy how he changes
His
game on game, though. That
nuts.
pivoting
Yeah.
to be able to change speed like that, it's crazy.
All right, here we go. Wing coming in again. Faker's going to drop the ultimate. Kuzan's going to land this slow. Faker eats some oranges to get out, trading flash for flash, and Wing not going to help much at all in that one as Faker just cheats towards the blue side of his jungle to escape.
Flexibility of Blue Ezreal. The one thing you can say about this champion is because he has 1150 range on his Mystic shot, okay, his laning, as with AD Ezreal, ever since W was nerfed and doesn't reduce attack speed, has always never been his strong point. But because he's so safe, he can farm from range so easily, Jay probably needs to ult at this point.
I think he'll be all right. Gonna dodge out. Pilot Arcane Shifts takes a little bit more of that damage, but ends up just being able to recall after pushing the wave, so not much lost there. CS advantage is starting to mount, though, in the side lanes for SKT, so we are seeing this gold gap slowly close that was opened by Jin Air with the 3 early kills.
Just to conclude my point, Ezreal can farm so safely that the one thing he does really open up is Alistar roaming, because Alistar can leave lane and Ezreal can just snipe from 1150 range with his Mystic shot, try and push the wave into turret with the ultimate, or just poke out bang, as we just saw on screen, and just stay relevant even when his support roams, and that's what Ezreal does. He loses lane in probably the safest way, so he's basically the Trace of AD carries.
To complement the Trace on the opposite side of the map, who isn't actually doing that wave pushing that we saw in game number 1, just trying to play more conservatively, and now Winged will find a pink board here. Clearing it out, Duke going to fall back as a result. Bengi finds a pink ward of his own on the bottom side of the river. Wing now thinking about possibility of a dive. They know exactly where Bengi is.
If Duke at any point is stunned against a wall, he will be burst instantly.
Here we go. So you're gonna try and push him forward. Duke now trying to get out. Does miss the cocoon. Jin Air, so much damage from Trace. Just explodes him.
Well, there's Graves for you.
Well, also that challenging smite too. Doing some
Kuzan
work
is
for
super
Wing.
overextended.
Yeah, and there's the Fakers. Gangplank ult coming in. Bengi here. Winged is here, though. He's going to stop up Bengi, at least for the moment, and try and run interference. Challenging smite down once again. There's Faker coming through with his exhaust. But Che is here, and he is huge. Faker now on the run, and he is just not going to, well, barely make it out inside Wolf, but gets chased down by Winged. Wolf now the next target. Where's Chase? Pulverized. There it is. Kuzan now wants another one.
And Jin Air are routing SKT.
Yeah, 7-0 now in favor of Jin Air as they are going to push through this mid lane. And that Graves band looking much more attractive as time goes on. Also, the Evelyn is just doing nothing.
SKT. Again, another Shades of History is going to see the replay once again. Wings pathing has been amazing.
Great.
That's usually where Bengi is, waiting for someone to overcommit. Speaking of waiting,
Yeah.
Ezreal ult comes through, and the flash headbutt pulverize is just beautiful from Jay. The mechanics are on point. The pathing is impressive. Jin Air's improvement in what, 2 days? Out of this world.
Yeah, Winged was really looking shaky in their first series, but they come in tonight, they play some very clean games, at least in game number 1, really knowing how to execute that strategy and being supremely patient for it to play out. And this time around, Jin Air just dominating every lane. We have a 3-0-1 Cassiopeia. That is not what you want. Cassiopeia should not have 3 kills this early in the game when she buys a tier.
There's nothing I would want more than a week where both Longzhu and Rox Tigers look like they're stepping up and SKT lose a series. Can you imagine what that means for champions as we move forward?
Well, again, there is an asterisk next to this. They didn't expect it in game 1, and they did play 2 of their subs, so they'll have a bitter pill to swallow if they're going to lose game number 2 with their starting lineup. Dragon number 1 at 13 minutes to Jin Air, and looks like Pilot, he's had to sacrifice a little bit of CS in the bottom side as a result of some of these roams, but like you said, Papa Smithy, he managed to hit that true shot barrage all the way through 3 members of SKT and opened up Che to simply walk into the middle of the map. Very fast rotation coming through from Alistar.
It's insane that this is the first Ezreal we've seen in Champions. We haven't seen Poppy this week. If this game goes to Jin Air, we will have had a full week without Poppy, so that'll be a slow burner in terms of champions being picked up, but Ezreal's flexibility and just the numbers. The one thing that really sticks out to me about Ezreal is that base damage is 350. It's always been crazy high. It's magic damage. Don't itemize towards it, but the assist it did there was what really tipped them over in that team fight. Could have been a fairly equal skirmish. Instead, landslide to Jin Air is Operation Try and Kill Trace is on again.
It is. Now he knows that Duke is in that brush. He saw him enter it, and Bengi actually avoided that Q damage. And
they don't know Elise is here.
They don't know Elise is here, and Elise is very strong. She's 4-0-3. Duke gets opened up on by the collateral damage. They find Bengi! Accidentally, it looked like. And now Duke, I am sorry, Duke. Trace is massive, and he is here to shotgun you into the ground. And Trace now, he's moving forward. Duke, of course, chewing his gum in the booth, not looking too impressed with that play, and now here comes turret number 2 for the Jin Air Greenwings.
SK Telecom have played a lot of games of top-level competitive League of Legends. I do not believe there has been a time when they are 0-9 down.
I'm sure it's happened, but it's been rare. They did pick themselves into this situation, but Winged has been such a hero. 100% kill contribution on 9 kills now for the jungler for Jin Air. Everything's just going his way this game, and we asked what happens. Okay, so they ban Rek'Sai and they take the Elise. Where does Bengi go? This Evelynn, and Evelynn has just been a total non-factor.
I mean, Evelynn face checks Graves, and Evelynn, you saw.
Well, exactly. She also built the. She built AP this game. She didn't build the Cinder Hulk, so taking the Sheen instead. And now this is what happens, basically getting one shot by a Graves or a Cassiopeia.
Worth knowing that Graves' ult was down, literally died to a melee range buckshot and a Q against the wall.
I also just don't even know why you would build damage on an Evelynn that in the late game you have a Quinn, a Gangplank, and a Misfortune on your team. Who is going to be the tank here?
Tom Kench from support.
I guess.
We are living in the Twilight Zone where Jin Air is bodying SK Telecom T1.
Well, remember, SKT still has a huge power spike in the late game. They have an incredible team fight. They have GP, they have MF. But can they hold on long enough is going to be the question. And can they stop randomly dying in the middle of the map?
Well, most of that has to be leveled at Bengi. It feels like every time he's tried to impact a lane, and once when he was just trying to innocently pick up his blue buff, he has been completely shut down and winged on such a terror. It looks like he's going to be building the Rylai's in a snowball sense. Why not?
Yeah, why not indeed. Add a little bit more crowd control for yourself. Kuzan now going to get ulted. Will he be the first death of the game? Jin Air, he is going to get killed. That is a shutdown for Faker, but Faker the fall as well. Wing now trying to get out of there as everyone seemingly in that mid lane. There's the true shot barrage hitting over the top. Trace now exhausted the second one, and that's another big shutdown onto Wing by Duke. So an important comeback, but they are still more than 5,000 gold behind.
It's a really nice rotation, specifically from the Abyssal Voyage from Wolf. Got the members in there. They were much faster to collapse to pick up the 2-for-1.
Yeah, very nicely coordinated there. Everybody in the mid lane, so they get some shutdown gold at the very least, but I don't think they're actually going to get a turret out of this when all is said and done. Duke now, he's trying to check. He knows something fishy is happening. He just blue trinketed the tri-brush behind him, but he's going to back off once he sees Trace.
Trace was looking for a face check, didn't get one. Pilot finally finds a bit of lane control. Still 20 CS down, but you don't pick blue Ezreal for the laning phase, and he's just doing his job while the rest of the map has been going wild.
Yeah. Kuzan now back in the mid lane, mopping up some minions. True Shot Barrage once again utilized just to clear out the wave on the bottom side. Do have Dragon in a minute 24. Could be the number 2 for Jin Air. They certainly should have control.
And we'll return to your point, in the late game, Gangplank especially. If Gangplank can get to 3-4 items, one set of barrels can win you a game. We saw it in the Casper Cup. We saw it from GBM in the Gauntlet towards Worlds. So they need to keep this pressure up, and that's a big ask against the world champions.
Certainly is. So Pilot now continuing to fire from the outside, and Pilot, a player who really made his debut and his name on Ezreal, so casting champs like this are among his best. Wolf going to get saved there from a pull combo, but they're just going to push in. Janair has that mid control already. They want the last outer turret, and they are going to get it.
Smart rotation. Remember, they had the teleport advantage. Trace has TP up. Duke's already used his, so Duke's very quick, but they want to brute force this turret. They're going to get it.
Yeah, they definitely are. Meanwhile, Trace moves into the mid lane just to make sure Faker's not going to push that down. Duke is going to zip up with his ultimate into top to see if he can get any turret damage now that he sees Trace in mid. But Trace just already moving back, so nicely played by Trace to just remove any pressure that could have been counter-pressed by SK Telecom during that time. And he doesn't even care, he's going to take red buff.
See that the only contrarian on the side of Janair. Oh, it's Faker.
Yep, going to eat the oranges, and he will be K. Not doing a lot of damage yet, though. Winged also quite tanky. Red buff, didn't see if Trace actually got it or not. Now they're going to try and collapse onto Duke. Bengi's going to get Bengi's just going to get shot. Bengi, you can't do that. Trace is huge.
Disrespect, honestly. Took a really direct path. Could have gone defensively through lane like he'd done multiple times and got his just dessert.
Yeah, SK Telecom looking out of sorts. They've only had one real moment of cohesion in this game, and that was the TP and Abyssal Voyage play into the mid lane. They're going to definitely lose this dragon now.
With the drop in vision, you can see the rise of Avalanche, not exactly Rek'Sai, but at this point, Bengi's basically a moving ward.
Yes. Especially with how fast Trace is able to kill people. I mean, that Graves Q does such a huge amount of damage.
Oh, it's no slouch either. 4 swiftness boots and CDR boots, of course, to get Pilot over to the Cat. 20% coming through from Iceborne Gauntlet after the rework, so it's getting to 40% CDR to be the disengage they don't have from Trundle and MF like they did last game.
This is just the most annoying build, too. On Ezreal right now, the fast Iceborne means that you have such a nice presence in the mid game for kiting around objectives.
What we usually see is tier into Iceborne Golem. You might think, okay, but there's no AD there for trading. But the big thing is, because you have 20% CDR, because the cooldown reduction has been changed to 1.5 seconds if you register the queue, for once you're actually able to control minion waves in a lane as Ezreal, just because you can throw out 6 Qs and it just stops the minion wave from getting to your turret. You can be able to push it back a little bit. The thing that always plagued Ezreal was minion wave control, and that AoE from Iceborne gives him that.
Yeah. Adds just a little bit more of that wave clear, and
good trading damage as well.
Yeah, for sure. Also, we have 2 Rylais now finished from Jinair, and this means we have to ask, how is SKT going to be engaging? Because Bengi can do it, but he will die instantly with his Runeglaive build. And there's no real other way for them to get in, and the kiting is going to be absolutely enormous from Iceborne double Rylais.
That's why when you think about the Graves versus Quinn matchup, if you ever dive in aggressively as Quinn, you're going to be in melee range of auto attacks. So there is outplay potential with a flash, specifically if Q or R is committed to by Trace, but even Duke going to struggle in the 1v1 side lane matchup.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, so SKT now trying to get some vision down. Quickly cleared out there as they use some blue trinkets around the mid lane. They want to push while they have an opportunity. No one is there except for Trace right now. Jay off on the side, but Trace is just going to use his ult to clear the wave.
Doesn't have a long cooldown. No objectives to fight over, so good use of the ult.
They're trying to get what farm they can and get some damage onto these turrets, but Jinair everywhere at once seemingly able to defend. Faker picking up some CS in that bottom side, and it's all about SKT just trying to get farm and buy themselves some time while they attempt to come back from this 5K deficit.
Talked about Baron buff taking last game. Still another Cassiopeia in this game. Even though it's blue Ezreal, of course, isn't the greatest at single target damage. Fast Baron potential.
Everybody moving up. I do have a Wolf Spirit there to see Che and Winged on the invade. They're still going to go ahead and take the Gromp, but Duke has to be very careful. Huge numbers of Jinair wards inside the SKT top side.
This is great to see Trace a threat again. For so long he has been the role player, the Rumble or the Maokai or the Gnar. Seeing him on a damage carry It's a great change. It hopefully heralds a new era for this new Jin Air
here
lineup.
we go, and they're going to use the TP immediately. Duke has his TP as well, but there's no vision, and they can do this Baron so quickly.
3,000 health.
But they're getting very low themselves from trying to take it. Jin Air's going to try and disengage, but there's a bullet time, not going to get a kill. Che is going to have to sacrifice himself, tries to flash out,
Baron's
but the Baron's still low. Are they going to get it? SK Telecom has a chance to turn this game around. No! Winged comes in with the smite to pick up the Baron. Jin Air get it anyway, but can they escape with their lives? That's 2 down for Jin Air. Duke still trying to pursue this smoke screen, trying to just disengage right now as best they can. Wolf going to come in with an Abyssal Voyage. Duke gets the ult to finish off the kill onto Che. Jin Air escape with 2. They killed Bengi, but they do get the Baron. Really risky call from Jin Air.
And if SKT specifically can pick up a couple of turrets, they need to get structures. They still have 0 turrets 25 minutes in. This will be their first. Pilot's healthy enough, has his ult again. It's going to be the single turret, so a very slight win to Jin Air, but at least they picked it up. It was a good steal from Winged.
Very nice steal. And SKT did the right thing. They kept this Baron low. Bengi's going to come in. And look at that. He's still alive, just doesn't quite hit the smite. His smite never went off, actually.
I think Winged actually was the same level and then pinged an extra level as Creeps died as he got over. So, yeah, just had the steady hands.
We're back now. 2 members of Jin Air retain the Baron buff, so they can start pushing. One of them, fortunately for them, is Trace.
No teleport at the moment, and of course won't be as maneuverable around the map as Duke.
Now, Trace and Pilot maintain that Baron buff, so that's probably the best case scenario if you had to have 2 people hold on to that from Jin Air.
I think it's going to have to be about the Abyssal Voyages into the back line. Again, we're not clear who they're going to be riding. If Bengi can get the random ones that you theoretically is putting together, maybe he can at least be an ult bot in the back line. But all eggs in the Faker scaling basket. He's got the Infinity Edge, he's got the Trinity Force, but it's not quite enough just yet.
No, definitely going to require a significant amount of time. He is actually has more money.
I mean, it is Gangplank, right?
Yeah, he is Gangplank, of course. But for a team that's 5K down, that in and of itself is relatively impressive. Jin Air now trying to go for Faker. Faker going to flash out, but it's one less summoner spell he has, and they're going to start working away on this bottom turret. Pilot has been zoned off of joining his team, at least temporarily.
Duke has no teleport, though. They're swapping turrets.
Yep. So Duke going to take out a tier 1. They traded for a tier 2, but how far can Jin Air go with this pressure? Trace still threatening, but none of his other teammates there. They're falling back to Dragon right now as Jin Air wants to take number 3 and maybe take this into a 5 scaling game. Whoops. Ooh, that wasn't good.
Wasn't Wei Zhao tier on the cross-map pushing of the ult, which means that Duke's going to get, at minimum, a lot of damage. Trace is racing there, though.
Yeah, Trace is coming in. Does have that home guard at this
hasn't been spotted
stage of the game. Duke is going to get 1v1, and that damage is enormous. Flash, Sterix Gage pop for Duke, and this is not a very exciting duel. Oh, he misses, actually. Nope. It doesn't matter in the end. The 1v1, too much, as Trace has to use his flash, but no flash onto Duke.
You notice, though, that of course Graves is one of the few champions who has an auto attack that can be dodged. It is effectively a spell with that box shot-like animation, so one of them missed. The Q did have a lot of value, but in the end, the gold difference between the two really paid off.
Yeah, 4-0-4 to Duke's 3-4-0. And now the pushing continues. No more Baron buff, and that means that bullet time will be utilized simply to clear the wave and chunk out Wing, stopping the pressure. But they did get a Dragon, and that's Dragon number 3, and we are going to be looking at about a 39-minute possible Dragon 5 if Jin Air gets the next 2.
Faker doesn't have ultimate yet. It's close to level 16, so he's doing his thing. He's going to finish Sterix Gage next and have a similar item build to Trace. But will it be enough? That's the question. So just, again, the front line, the tank you're talking about, Bengi in particular is the poorest jungler at the moment, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just been his itemization. That Runeglaive was so puzzling to start off this game, and he committed that after dying. Like, that's the whole thing.
That's the thing. There's snowball Runeglaves, and there's getting killed at your blue buff at level 2, then still building Runeglaves.
Yes, just awful.
Bengi's deserved all the plaudits he's got in the last years. 2015 was incredible.
Yeah.
But,
well, sometimes you have off days. He certainly was great in their first series this week, but this Evelyn not doing him any favors, and perhaps SK Telecom taking their opponents a bit too lightly coming in tonight. And Pilot actually, huge chunk courtesy of Faker. Pilot actually has to cast his heel just to get out of that situation.
here comes Trace.
And there's Faker getting bounced around, and he just falls. Bullet time. Just going to be a little bit of tickling here as Kuzan comes over the wall. They want to get Bang right now, but Wing going to flash forward. They cocoon Wolf in the end.
Losing turrets though at the same
And
time.
Wolf is going to fall too. Now they do lose a turret. Wolf is, or actually Duke rather, is on the split pushing mission, but they're trading evenly at the very least. And with 2 members down, you'd think this is going to be an inhibitor. Trace is recalling just to prevent Duke from doing more damage to Jin Air's base. And here comes inhibitor number 1 at about 30 minutes.
And Trace has teleport himself to match Duke's teleport if anything changes. Duke's backing away, so he's not even going to get this inner turret. He's certainly going to have to run away from Trace. So inhibitor
Here
picked up for
comes
Jin Air.
Trace with the Yomu's Ghost Blade. He's going to start firing his Q. Gets 1 auto off and then retreats, not pursuing Duke all the way down the lane. Duke has flash anyway, so very unlikely that Trace was going to make that happen.
Nice time at the back though. Minute till Baron comes up so they can go back and spend. Ezreal's completely out of mana. Trace is just a monster.
There he is with his characteristic lack of expression.
He's not surprised. He's done this tons of times in solo queue.
And I talked so much about Trace's top lane Graves in the Jin Air's first day of
I know.
competition. They didn't pull it out. I guess they were just saving it for SK Telecom later in the week. And there he is. What a badass.
They were sandbagging Monte Cristo.
Well, you know what? If they were sandbagging, I'm glad this was the result. See, that's what happens when you sandbag, Papa Smithy. You do badly, but then you do well. See?
OMG
your
are
intention-
playing the long game. MSI hasn't been decided yet. Worlds are still on the table.
You don't sandbag and then play even worse later on. That's not sandbagging. That's called being bad.
They're method actors. They now identify with sandbags.
I see. The dead weight.
I've seen that OMG lineup. It's not too far away from the truth.
Well, Trace now with his TP up, back down into the bottom side. Duke really unable to deal with this Graves, who is so very far ahead of him.
And now the fun, interactive blue Ezreal poke under turrets to deal with as well. I can hear Dongjun.
Yeah, Dongjun is just yelling Q right now. Korean caster. All right, so Trace backing off, but ever so slowly, they're making this turret fall. And here we go, 1Q another time onto Faker.
Still hear the Korean casters talking about the Qs. That's the reality of Blue Ezreal. It's why we were puzzled that we hadn't seen much of it before. Duke doesn't have a lot of AoE wave clear, remember?
No, he does not. And that's going to prompt Trace just to head straight down and push this wave straight into the inhibitor turret in the bottom lane. Duke not doing much to the very large number of minions, and that's SKT needs to back up. That is not a good use of Gangplank Old Faker.
First competitive game on Gangplank. It hasn't really been about Faker, but hasn't been covered in glory like his other champion debuts.
Yeah, there we go. Trace going to take down the last, or the second rather, inhibitor turret. Winged, very heavily damaged, but that's all they need to do. Jin Air, they don't have to do more than that right now. They have 1 inhibitor down. They got another one naked. 20 seconds until Dragon number 4. Baron is live. Everything looks fantastic for the Greenwings. SK Telecom has to pull a rabbit out of a hat.
I think the big query for SKT going forward, because there is absolutely an asterisk on the 2-0 score, if that's what happens in this series. But the big query for me is Bengi. Think about his history so far this week. You're right, he did have an impressive overall series against CJ, but he was caught out at his blue buff. In this game, in almost the same fashion, caught out his blue buff. And then let's talk about champion pool. Rek'Sai was banned away. Elise was taken. Bengi only had Eve.
Apparently no Kindred that we know of.
So I think it's time to start targeting Bengi because it doesn't feel like he's grown that champion pool very much.
Well, you wouldn't even expect Bengi to play a champion like Kindred anyway. He's just not that kind of player.
I completely agree with you. So you need to find a backup control jungler. Where's the Lee Sin?
Yeah, I think the Lee Sin was definitely a better choice. And we know he can play that. He always can play Nunu no matter what the meta is, even if it's not particularly fantastic right now.
It's okay. Like it's
okay.
I don't know what Eve served here. Like, okay, you get 3 kills, you show up with a Rune Glaive and kill everyone because they're squishy, I understand, but the converse of that is you fall behind and you're useless.
Yeah, absolutely useless. Trace and Winged now down on this bottom side. And here we go. 4 dragons run for Jin Air. They only have to wait about 5 minutes, and that'll be a threat on to number 5. So
Miracle Baron. It's Miracle Barrel time.
Yes. And bullet time. If they can pull it off, it'll be impressive. So Jin Air, they don't have to play aggressively here. They can play a very slow and methodical push.
Pinging on the minion wave.
Yeah, just chipping away at that inhibitor. There's no need for them to commit. They have everything in their favor right now.
Pilot even has blue buff. He has such a big mana pool. Doesn't cost a lot to queue, but infinite here, and the mirror mana can just stay toggled.
And there we go, another GP ult coming through, but it just doesn't do anything. Wing clears out the barrel, and that'll be a little bit wide on the True Shot barrage. They have to be careful. Wing falling relatively low. More zoning coming in. Che decides now is the time. Duke is punched forward. Duke falls to Pilot, and now they take that final inhibitor. So the zones were down, and that meant it was time to push the go button for Jin Air.
Che is probably not going to pick up an MVP if they win this series, but what a series he has had.
Yeah, Che has been on fire tonight. You have to give it to Trace, I think, or Winged in this particular game, but overall, Che, out of this best of 3, is definitely the MVP.
Winged literally pooped on mid, top, and jungle, and those 3 members at the start of this game, and those 3 people are Faker, Bengi, and Duke. You can't do better.
Yeah, you can't. And Winged has struggled. When we look at Winged, when he was replacing Chaser towards the end of last year, and we look at some of his games that we saw at IEM or earlier this week, he was very underwhelming, but he has just hit the jackpot tonight, and whether that was his skill or entirely accidental, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, Baron's dead.
Yeah, goodbye, Baron. So Baron taken. That will bridge them nicely into a 5th dragon that is 3 minutes away.
They're going to push up the minion wave only because they want the Baron buff minions. Of course, all base turrets are down.
Yes, well,
Nexus turrets only.
there is 1 base turret in mid lane, so they've got 1 more to work
my
through.
mistake.
But taking the inhibitor first, certainly more of a priority. Faker trying to get some barrels over the wall, but that will be seen.
Getting poked a little bit, so we'll back away. Pilot doesn't have blue anymore.
But they have nothing to play for right now, really. Jin Air, they have so many edges. This Baron buff will go immediately into the 5th dragon stack, with the timers being the way they are. So there's not really a reason to do anything that is risky.
Taking this inhibitor makes the 5th dragon so much easier to get. You have super minions pushing in the diametrically opposite lane, so good to pick that up.
Yep, absolutely.
Still a few minutes away from that dragon. We don't have a timer on the screen yet.
So we are going to have a mass recall right now. Time to go back and shop. Now that these inhibitors are down, and everyone simply backing away slowly.
I love Wing's itemization. He's actually got Eye of the Equinox as well.
Oh, very interesting.
Upgrading that side stone means that they have so many more permanent wards available to them. They have this triple blue trinket, double sweepers, and then, yeah.
Yeah, 2 sight stones.
I mean, they have item caps and plenty of placeable wards.
Oh boy,
Great
Trace
spot.
just got his GA.
Oh, baby.
To complete his 6 items. 2 minutes until Dragon now. And Faker has to flash. And Trace is going to just destroy him. And Faker gets saved in the last second by Wolf. Nice bullet time, actually. Trace is alone, but he has the GA. Ooh, boys, getting close. Let's see the GA spawn, and Trace just going to quick draw out. Does have a lot of lifesteal, however. Bit of an overcommitment there. Nice save on Faker by Wolf. He probably just saved that game.
But Jin Air went all in when they didn't need to and almost paid a very heavy price. Trace dies there. They lose positioning on 5th dragon needlessly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Trace had to use both of his summoners to pull that little maneuver off, and he lost his GA passive.
That was the first major misstep, honestly, over 2 games for Jin Air.
Still have the super minion pressure. They're still working on this turret. Faker gonna get a nice 1,000 damage barrel combo there, but Winged is quite tanky. So can they finish off this last remaining inhibitor? They have this cannon minion. It only needs a couple more shots. There it's gonna fall to Trace. But they don't have to push this. They can just sit here and run around in circles until the dragon spawns.
That's right. You can see Super Minion Wave pushing in top. It'd be lovely if they could get this mid lane inhibitor. They do not need it, given the control they already have over dragon.
Here we go, pushing it down, and they're just going to finish it off through the Make It Rain. No ult used by either Faker or Bang to push them away. They are probably saving those for the dragon. Jin Air trying to maximize their advantage. Man, those Nexus turrets are getting quite low.
Pilot's getting lower and lower in mana because he's toggled on the mirror mana this whole time, looking for maximum poke.
So here we go. And there we go. They finally decide to use the GPL Che, just going to disengage. It's a lot of damage, though. He has to use his ultimate right now. Trace gets one of the Nexus turrets. Dragon is live, so Jin Air doesn't have to push this. They can back off if they want to. Duke going to get wrapped up by a cocoon and then taken out. There's the bullet time, but it's not going to get any kills. Trace now just going to use his E to disengage. And Jin Air, they're low. And now are they too low to go ahead and take this dragon without the ults on the side of SKT?
With inhibitors down, though, I think leaving the base against triple Super Minion Waves is not realistic. They got full information now. They're trying it, though.
Well, I think you have to go for this, but it's just going to fall so damn fast. And before they even get there,
they gave up.
Yeah, that's going to be the final dragon for Jin Air. They're at number 5. They lose another Nexus turret in the interim. Naked Nexus. Everyone from Jin Air recalling for what is almost certainly going to be, barring a miracle, the final push of this game.
See the players on your screens, they all look perturbed. They did not expect this when they rolled out of bed this morning. They took a big risk game 1, Scout and Blank playing. They were punished, probably deservedly so. This is the full World Championship lineup.
Yeah, and, well, except for Duke.
That's
yes.
true. That's true.
But Jin Air, they came in with a wacky strategy, played it nearly perfectly in game number 1, and Trace's pocket top Graves has done a huge amount of work, and you would think that SK Telecom would be prepared for this. It's not a secret. He does this all the time in solo queue.
And they could have banned at Monte Cristo.
Yeah, they could have, absolutely.
They did not choose to ban anything other than the Trundle being removed overall.
Well, that was removed by Jin Air, so.
Exactly, and now they're looking for the win.
And they are. Bengi goes down to about a third HP immediately. Inhibitor back up. They're going to take this one down first, as methodical as can be. They want this 2-0 over SK Telecom. Naked Inhibitor. They just have to clear out these minion waves. Wade dueling up poke damage. Jay going to go in, though. Duke on the side. Trace is there. He is blinded. Duke going to make it out with the help of Hysterics Gauge, but Wolf falls, and that's going to be it. They take down the Nexus. Win. And Jin Air with the 2-0. What an unlikely situation coming in tonight. Jin Air comes up with a huge win.
It continues and ends a week of 2-0 wins, but who would have penciled in Jin Air Greenwings 2-0 sweeping SK Telecom?
Yeah, massive upset. And I love their push comp in game number 1. Winged went to town on Bengi in game number 2, fed this top lane Graves, and SKT did not have an answer.
A lot of questions to be leveled at SKT. Sure, the first game can be a write-off, but the second game, I mean, Bengi, what a 2015 after a poor 2014. Suddenly he's going to have to re-examine his champions pool specifically, because it felt like when Rek'Sai and Elise were off the board, he just didn't have much to offer.
No, he didn't. Well, very surprising.